we say to date, I believe we'll do that. But these are really important points. I hope as you listen to what these points are and what's being shared, that for you, it's not just, oh, wow, that sounds hard. But like, you really are getting ideas that relate to action. How when you leave here today, some of these comments might affect your behavior, whether you're a woman or whether you're not. How it might actually lead you, like I said, to action that can be productive in helping us resolve in whatever way you can some of the that still exists on this topic out in the industry. For me, it's kind of interesting because I grew up in a home that was very, very musical. My father was a studio musician and he was very good friends with these musicians known as the Wrecking Crew. And so people from that particular group of men would oftentimes visit my home and they would kind of hang out with my dad. And there was one guitar player in particular. So that Wrecking Crew, like Glenn Campbell was a guitar player and so was Tommy Tedesco. And Tommy Tedesco was very good friends with my father. So he would fly in from LA and hang out at our house pretty often through the summer. And whenever you show, he was like this kind of larger, gregarious man, just this lovely, talented guitar player, very friendly, very likable. And I remember him always being like, you know, go get your guitars, let me hear you play. And so my brothers would go get their guitars and play for him, and my sister, and I would go get my guitar and play. And it was subtle, but it was like, I remember this, and he was such a kind and lovely man. He really was so gracious and so good. I do remember though my brothers getting almost like a lesson after, you know, they'd play, where it was kind of like a critique, where it was like, you know, you're doing a good job, but you might want to blah, 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 blah. And then be like, oh, okay, cool, thank you. And then if I play, it was like, that was really good. And I think because he didn't want to be unkind, right?
Yeah,
he didn't want to be like critical. It was just like, oh, that is so good. But it was interesting because I remember thinking like, wow, it's a different opportunity, right? Like this is culturally a little bit of a different opportunity. Not because anyone is trying to be mean, actually the opposite.
Yeah.
Because someone's trying to be really courteous and like sensitive.
It's like that misaligned intention of like, I'm going to do this kind thing, or we're making the right decision, but you're accidentally taking away an opportunity from a woman, like,
Yeah.
or a girl, or a young person, or whoever. But it's
Yeah.
interesting sometimes that it's like that switch of like,
Yeah, and I think that there are different opportunities through, you know, the historicity of music development. It's so easy to see, even in American music, how it's like, okay, there's culturally, right, a lot of celebration for men that would go jam at clubs and bars in the 1800s and develop their music. But if you were a woman who did, ooh, now you're labeled. You're that kind of woman who would go into that place. So the opportunities are, of course, different from like so early on, even way before that, but that's just like a little grab at history where it's like, okay, that's not, is that an equal opportunity? Like if the men are celebrated to go practice music and develop it, but the women are kind of shunned and shamed, it's not an equal opportunity. And so when I was young, like I would think about that a little bit, where it's like, wow, that's really interesting, right? I know this man's trying to be courteous, these people are trying to be kind, but not pushing me.
Yeah.
Consequently, right? Really comfortable pushing the boys because it's like you need that. But like, oh, okay, well, be careful with you. It's like, okay, but then maybe I'm not learning as much, right? And the other time I remember where it just was like, wow, this is really different. As I was in I did a lot of music competitions growing up, and I remember winning one, and I just kind of heard, you know, off to the side like, the girl got the pity vote. You know, and you're like, oh, so like that's a thing. Okay, and I remember that just kind of, actually I don't think of this as a disadvantage. I think it was such an advantage actually that happened, because I remember thinking, oh, like you can't show up and be good and have it be close. You know what I mean? You have to show up and blow everyone out of the water.
Right.
So that there's no risk that someone would think like, oh, it was close and you probably just won because you're a girl and they felt bad. You know, it's like, ooh, okay. And that did affect, actually, you know, for me, how I practiced, how I listened to music, how I prepared for all things, including further competitions, where in my head it was like, okay, it can't be close. It can't come down to the wire with these things. Like, you have to be the best by a long shot. Right. So everybody knows. And so I think as we're talking, there are just interesting things already coming up in terms of self-advocacy and the idea of opportunities, what that looks like for women in the industry, vocally advocating for yourself. I didn't get my solo, or, like whatever it might be. And just being able to confidently settle into the leadership that is given to you in different capacities and places. All of these topics I think are so lovely, and I want to talk about them. And maybe we can pull them into some of these following questions. Because I think I want to next just ask you guys, like, maybe this is like not where all of our head is right now, but I want it to kind of get there. What do you think the advantages are to being a woman in the industry? Like, what have been for you the really perceived and enjoyed advantages to being a female?
I have a really good one. A female in a male-dominated field, nobody forgets me. So I work really hard and I do a really nice job, and most of the people I work with will remember me because I am a woman.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's a really big one, so it's great.
Right.
I think that I understand that and I agree with that. I remember when I started teaching jazz guitar at a university, I was 18. And at that time, there was one other woman in the country. Like one other female out of all. Wow. She was at Berkeley. She was a lovely guitar player, fabulous teacher. But that was it. It was like 2. That number has changed, you know what I mean? And thankfully, it has grown. It's still pretty small. It's still real small, but I mean, it's not 2 anymore. But because of that, just like Annie said, I think that did actually advantage me in a number of scenarios where people are like, oh, I know your name. You're like that girl. And I was like, yes. Yeah. Any other advantages that come to your mind?
Yeah, no, like there's kind of that novelty of like having a woman in the band, right, thing, which is, has served me, certainly. What I've noticed, more so I think as an instructor, and having this conversation with other women, is I think there's a different natural intuitiveness and maybe a permission to be a little more gentle as a woman, and that sometimes I'm a safer place for students to come and be vulnerable and admit what they're struggling with than if they had a male. So that's kind of a special place to get to inhabit.
Yeah, I would chime in on that, just relationally, that's exactly what came to my head, the gentleness to it. And then I also was thinking, expect the unexpected, Like women are, men are the norm, women are the exception thing, and it's just, strong women walks in the room and it's like, wow, that's unexpected, like, here we go. And it could go any direction, so kind of owning that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's presented.
Yeah, and to kind of hit on kind of both of those sort of topics, I'm the only girl in our band, and that, to kind of replay what you said, they do just, you stand out and they see that and remember that. So everywhere we go, they're just like, oh my gosh, you're the girl in the band, and wow, how do you do it with all those guys in there, all this stuff. And it really, they notice things like that, and that's really cool. But also